Okay, so if you were not here on the 8th, this is what we did for the day. So at the top of your note sheet, there was this image, and you just want to react to it, just so you know, this is Lenin. So that is what it's asking about. And that is what it says on the poster. So it says Lenin cleans the world of filth, or Comrade Lenin sweeps the globe clean. So then I gave you time to prep your lecture notes, and then we got into the lecture. So we're talking about the Russian Revolution. So Russia at the time was being run under an autocratic system. The Tsar had total power, so just like a monarchy. In the late 1800s, Alexander III was using a lot of force to control the population. He would imprison people who would question his authority or who were not Russian Orthodox, which was their state religion. He would also forbid the use of other languages. So it's all about trying to control your population. Um, the third thing, kind of most importantly, is he does create a lot of organized violence against Jewish people. So again, that's not Russian Orthodox. That's going to be another religion, but we are going to see how this kind of does snowball into the Holocaust. They called them pogroms, and he is going to organize this violence. And so a lot of Jewish people are forced to flee Russia. And this kind of makes it so that a lot of Jewish people are going to these other countries in Europe with no money. And so they are seen to an extent as like a leech on society because they are coming here very poor to these other countries. So we'll kind of see that snowballing into this bigger hatred of Jewish people. This is not the only factor, but I'm just saying this is a contributing factor. Um, so Russian industrialization also creates more class tensions. The working class had terrible working conditions in Russia, and the tensions are going to still be growing because the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s, everyone thought Russia was going to win easy, but Japan actually does defeat Russia, and it shows their weakness. All right, so now revolution, because of all those tensions, is starting to rise. Karl Marx is going to start to spread his ideas, and the Bolsheviks are going to be a radical group of Marxists. So their leader is going to be Vladimir Lenin, who we saw in that poster at the very beginning. He is going to flee to Western Europe in the early 1900s because of all this pressure against him, kind of leading this revolution. In early 1905, there's going to be 200,000 workers who do protest the czar. So the czar is obviously not going to like this. They're protesting the terrible working conditions that were created. So Tsar Nicholas II is going to order his soldiers to fire into the crowd, and hundreds are going to be killed, but thousands are going to be injured. And this event is going to be called Bloody Sunday. So as of now, he still has power, but more strikes are going to break out, and Nicholas is going to see that maybe things have to change a little bit. So he does create the Duma, which is kind of like a legislative power, like parliament. So he creates them, but then 10 weeks in, he's kind of like, this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I should still have total power. So he kind of strips them of almost all their power after creating this parliament. So then World War I is going to happen. As we saw, Russia was not very well equipped for the war. They suffered very heavy losses, and the war was very unpopular. Tsar Nicholas is going to give a lot of his power to his wife, which is not going to be good because Alexandra, his wife, is going to be very heavily influenced by this man, Rasputin. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to talk about him and all the weird things that he has, but I might think of like an extra credit opportunity about Rasputin. And lastly, for how it concerns our class, the war is going to create many food shortages. So again, the people are just getting more and more upset. And that is eventually going to lead to the March Revolution. So in March, over 200,000 workers again are going to take to the streets, and the soldiers are ordered to shoot. However, they kind of agree with the protesters. So after not too long, they actually are going to join the protest. And so Tsar Nicholas realizes this is not going to work well for him. So he abdicates the throne, and they do create a provisional government, mostly based from those people who were in the Duma. Sensing this, Lenin is going to return to Russia. He feels like it is safe again for him. And he is going to return to Russia in April of 1917. So again, at this point, there are no Marxists or communists really running the government. It is this provisional, kind of more of an oligarchical government at this time. However, only a couple months later, or half a year later, there is going to be the Bolshevik Revolution. So in November of 1917, the Red Guard, the Bolsheviks, are going to storm the Winter Palace, and they are able to take over the government relatively easily. It's not a terribly deadly takeover at that point. And Lenin does get put in power. Lenin does, with these Marxist or communist ideas, plan to redistribute land and control the factories. Again, one of the big things was the workers and how terrible their conditions were. However, we are also going to see him kind of go back to some of the Tsar's ideas for political prisoners or people who didn't agree with him, establishing gulags, which are just basically work prisons. If you've seen Stranger Things, season 4, that is sort of like a gulag. Then he is, as we saw in our World War I unit, he is going to sign a treaty with Germany to leave World War I. He does give up land in return for that, but they are officially out of the war. However, more war is going to be coming. They do have a civil war after that. So not everyone wanted the Red Army or the Marxists to be ruling Russia. So opponents are going to create the White Army. This includes people who wanted a czar back in power. It's going to include people who wanted democracy for Russia. And it's going to include some socialists who did not agree with Lenin. So even within their kind of party, there's going to be people who didn't agree with him. We are also going to see a lot of Western nations try to aid the White Army so that, because Lenin taking over is kind of creating this big unknown for a lot of the Western world, like how is that type of government going to run? And the West is very afraid of that. So they do not want them to win. The war is going to kill 14 million Russians, and the Red Army is going to be victorious and stay in power. That is going to lead us to Stalin. So Lenin is going to suffer a stroke in 1922. And this is where Stalin really begins to consolidate power in the Communist Party. Lenin is still in charge after the stroke, but you can kind of see the end, right? So in 1928, Stalin was in total command of the Communist Party and began rule as a dictator. We are going to see a lot of, I guess you could say, shady ways in which he consolidates powers, murdering or assassinating a lot of his enemies and even some friends. And Lenin, who kind of started this party, right? He is very weary of Stalin. He, in 1924, said, "Comrade Stalin has concentrated enormous power in his hands, and I am not sure that he always knows how to use that power with sufficient caution." So he's clearly not seeing Stalin as a good force for good in Russia, but at that point, there was not much that he could do. So that is where we are going to leave off for today on Russia. We are going to be talking about it more, but remember to write your summary at the bottom. And then I will be actually putting this as the exit ticket. So don't have to worry about that, but I haven't put the exit ticket in yet. All right, so just try to get that in.